there. I'm Gary Parrish. Welcome to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me, and we're both going to be here with you for the next hour, getting you ready for a college basketball season that gets underway on Monday. Norlander, we're just 4 days away, so let's start by focusing on some of the true national title contenders. Let me run you through a few facts, and then we'll talk through it.
Cool.
Purdue is number one in the AP poll, but I personally have St. John's number one in my top 25 and one. Meantime, Norlander, you've got Houston number one in your top 101 teams in the sport. And Florida and UConn, for what it's worth, they both also received first place votes in the preseason AP poll. So my first question for you, do we really have an unusual number of legitimate title contenders heading into this season? And tell me why you think it's Houston's year to actually get it done.
I got plenty on Houston. What would you say is a usual number of title contenders entering into a season out of curiosity? What's the number that you'd place that at going in?
I think typically you can look at, say, the preseason AP poll and how many different teams got first place votes. In this year, that's 4. And sometimes it can be as small as 2.
Yeah, I'd say a typical year, 4 going in. It does feel bigger to me personally. It feels like a wider number. I've got Houston at 1. My preseason top 5 goes Houston, Purdue, then Kentucky, Michigan, and then Duke. We'll get to some of those teams in just a little bit here. Season is almost here, and we are super excited to just lay out a ton to set the table for next Monday when we will tip off the season. But why Houston? For me at number 1, it's really not that complicated. It's the most consistent program. It's finished 4 years at number 2 at Ken Pom. It's finished 5 straight seasons in the top 5. And GP, even if you go back 2 more years, over the past 7 years, it's been top 15. No other coach, no program in the country can match that, period. So it has been the most consistent program overall. Sampson practically has a winning mandate baked into his DNA of this program as much or more than any other team, program, school in the country. That's not the biggest reason I have Houston at number 1, but obviously all of that, what I just laid out, plays a major factor. The amount of times I have seen Houston over the past half decade just sap the will out of an opponent in the final 10 minutes of the game practically can't be counted. They don't win every game, but in every game they sign up for 40 and they play 40 and they win almost every single time. More reasons 3 core pieces are back, and it's not just that they have 3 back, it's actually who they bring back. Milos Uzan turns 23 in a couple of months. He's going to run the offense. He returns. Emmanuel Sharp, also a senior, a ton of experience. He started almost 70 games for Houston, and he has as much motivation as basically anyone in the sport after the ball was in his hands, and Houston did not even get a shot off to win the national championship. Because of him, I left him to roar back and have a tremendous season. And then Joseph Tugler is ridiculous as a defender. He might be the best one in the entire sport. So because he is as versatile of a defender as anyone that Kelvin Sampson's ever had, that's another reason. And then the last one is the class coming in, and we'll see how much burn these guys get. I think it's going to be a much different situation in March than early in the season. But big man Chris Senac, he's a top 10 prospect. You've got 2 guards that are top 20 prospects, Kingston Fleming, Isaiah Hardwell. These are guys that have potential one-and-done futures and certainly NBA futures overall. It's by far his best freshman class since he's gotten to Houston. So the combination of projected NBA talent in addition to how many pieces beyond the core 3 I just mentioned, that's why for me, it really wasn't a tough call to put Houston number 1.
Houston, you'll get no argument from me. They are going to be a lot of people's pick for all of the reasons you've just laid out and others. Purdue is the other favorite alongside Houston. Those are the teams that are ranked first and second in the AP poll. When we did our Candid Coaches series this offseason, we got a lot of really positive reaction related to Matt Painter and the Purdue program, Kelvin Sampson and the Houston program. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my sense is that if there's a rooting interest within the sport, within the industry, absolutely. If you're a Kentucky fan, you want Kentucky to do it. If you're an Auburn fan, you want Auburn to do it. If you're a UCLA fan, you want UCLA to do it. But I get the sense within the sport, there is like a growing sentiment, perhaps just among coaches, but I hear it a lot. I really would like to see Kelvin Sampson get one at Houston, or I really would like to see Matt Painter get one at Purdue. And those are the 2 coaches who, at least according to the AP poll, are set up best to do it. Do you recognize that at all, or am I making it up?
No, I do. I think that's something that's out there. I think that for whatever reason, maybe people that are actually following the sport, maybe they're not, aside from rooting for your own team, I don't know if the sentiment around Houston and Kelvin Sampson, and this is a coach who one time was run out of the sport for cheating, and around Matt Painter, who's had some very infamous losses. I don't feel like feels like a lot of people are rooting for the Blue Jays to win the World Series. I don't know if that same sentiment is carrying over to that level with either of these teams, but within the sport, within the coaching ranks, yes, I would say overwhelmingly people are looking for Sampson, 70 years old now, to get his first, and Painter in his mid 50s to get his first. But while those two teams, I think statistically are the most likely to be considered to be the best team in the country, to extend out what you let off the show with GP, I just don't view this as a two-team race. UConn also in there. St. John's isn't in my top 5 or even in my top 8, but I would put them in there as well. There's just a litany, a variety of teams. Florida, clearly the reigning champions in there. We'll get to, again, a lot more of these teams as the hour goes along. But personally, I don't view this as a two-team, one-tier race. I would put the likes of Kentucky and Michigan and Duke and potentially UConn in there as well to be as viable and legitimate as a national title contender entering into the season. So to me, big picture, this does feel like a fairly wide open race as we start. And I promise you, I can't wait to talk about this sport all season long with you, GP, here on CBS Sports Network and on the pod, because to me, maybe this is just the anticipation of the season, and I just cannot wait for us to get to Monday night. Get me to ball, please, as quickly as possible. I feel like we are set to have just an incredibly rewarding and notable season, just filled with storylines, because I think the talent and the team level combined is going to be as good as anything we've seen in the past 7 or 8 years.
It's got the potential to be that. We'll explain further why as this show progresses. You mentioned St. John's. I want to circle back to them. As you know, I do the top 25 and 1 all off season. I update in real time without the benefit of any computer rankings to guide me. I'm really just
which I like. I like that, though. You do that. I like that you do that, and you stick to your guns.
I'm working off pen and paper and whatever is left up here. And so at some point after the season's over and St. John's is your outright Big East champions and, obvious national title contender, even if their run in the NCAA tournament ended earlier than most thought. You see what Rick Pitino is able to do in the transfer portal. He's able to bring back Zuby Ejiofor. At one point, he adds Ian Jackson, the former 5-star prospect who is from New York but played his freshman season at North Carolina. Rick Pitino himself describes Ian Jackson as the, quote, next great St. John's point guard. So I'm like, all right, this sounds great. You've got probably the Big East preseason player of the year in your front court. You've got St. John's next great point guard. You've got enough other stuff in the transfer portal where I can reasonably call your roster the most talented roster in the country. That's the number 1 team. St. John's is number 1 in the top 25 and 1. And I felt good about it. And almost everything I've heard since then has made me feel less good about it. I'm sticking to my guns, perhaps stupidly, but I am going to stick to my guns here. But a lot of my basis was tied to not just having a really talented roster, but the pieces fitting well together. And now it's unclear how much the pieces fit well together. Case in point, Ian Jackson, previously described as the next great St. John's point guard by St. John's head coach, is no longer even called a point guard. He was actually nominated for the shooting guard award in college basketball and isn't expected to be St. John's point guard going forward. That's all stuff that's just happened this offseason. I still love the talent. I trust that Rick Pitino, one of the greatest basketball minds and coaches of all time, will figure it out. But if I'm being hand to heart honest, I'm a little more concerned today than I was, say, the day that Rick was calling Ian Jackson the next great St. John's point guard.
All right, you're going into it. Big on St. John's. Around the break here, we're going to get into some teams that we differ on. We can just touch on St. John's right now specifically because GP has the Johnnies at 1. I have them 10, and I still think I would put St. John's and Florida. Those are the 2 teams that I have in that range that are at I consider anyone that was being my, say, top 11 to be a national title contender going into the season. But we'll see how it goes for you. I think you've got a decent chance at being right. I mean, St. John's coming off its best season in a generation, if not 2, depending on how you want to define that term. And after the way it ended in the NCAA tournament, St. John's going to be a much better team on offense all around this season, and I'm very interested to see how Patino, who's just about as good a coach as anyone in the sport, handles it. But I appreciate you not backing off. Sometimes this actually blows up on you, and it's really good podcast content. So I'm good either way. If you're right, that's awesome. You're going to have held off the haters and proven to be correct. Or this is going to go really badly for you, and our listeners and viewers will let you know, and that will be good for the show.
There's a pattern throughout my life, dating all the way back to childhood, where stubbornness does not serve me well. Perhaps I should have learned my lesson before I lost all my hair. But here I am again. Like, if I'm being completely honest, if I were going to switch anything, it would be Purdue. I think Purdue is the safest pick among all legitimate national title contenders. Just safe. I don't have any doubt they're going to be there at the end. But if I were to switch to Purdue now, I'm just switching to what everybody else already has. And so then if Purdue actually does it, I didn't do anything except follow everybody else. Meantime, with St. John's, they didn't get a single first place vote in the AP poll. I am by myself on this one. Rick Pitino, I'm putting my trust in you. Don't let me down. When we come back, we'll discuss some teams that Norlander and I are very different on. I love BYU. He doesn't seem to as much. He's super high on Kansas. I'm a little lower. We'll talk through all of that next. This is the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're here on CBS Sports Network. Norlander, let's discuss a few teams that we are pretty different on paper in this preseason. Let's start with BYU out of the Big 12. I got the Cougars third based on what they brought back, what they brought in, both in the transfer portal and in the freshman class. Of course, the star expected to be A.J. DeBonsa, the five-star freshman from New England. You've got BYU all the way down at 15th in your top 101 teams. What concerns you about the Cougars?
It's not such a, I think it's just more about you being higher than me being lower here. And a reminder to everyone watching in real time on television, we appreciate you for tuning in. Or if you're watching after the fact, go to CBSSports.com, check GP's top 25 and 1. In fact, I think that'll get a boost and a refresh here in advance of Monday. And my top 101 teams list you can find on the CBS Sports app or CBSSports.com if you want to compare and see where GP and I differ, particularly in our top 25 teams. But you've got BYU all the way up at 3. I think you're higher than on BYU than just about anyone. So as you said on previous episodes, St. John's, BYU, DeBanza, the whole deal. You're ride or die with them, and I think this could work out for you. I still have BYU improving from a season ago. It finished 26 at Ken Pom. I just want to see how the defense is. Like, you've got the Cougars at 3. Well, this was a team that was 82nd in defensive efficiency at Ken Pom, and universally, if you look at all the metrics across the board, it was just not a top 70 defense in the country last season. If you're going to be a top 3 team in the country, I think you probably or almost definitely need to be a top 30 defense. Now, there's a world, if you told me that BYU actually wound up being the best offense in the country, I could see that happening. But even still, if you're going to do that and be a top 3 team, you can't be the 70th best defense. It just won't work out. The math won't work that way. So can this team jump to top 40 in defensive efficiency? I think it's got a good shot. That's why I have them 15th, which is still plenty high. And I would still rank BYU as a Final Four contender. But I do think it's more about your bullishness than my bearishness on the Cougars.
Okay, let me argue my side then, because you mentioned that they finished 26th at Ken Pom last season. That's a fact. This is also a fact. Over the final 8 weeks of the season, and you probably remember because I made this point on the podcast many times as we were heading toward March, BYU over the final 8 weeks of the season, which is not a small sample size. Like, that's a pretty good chunk of college basketball. They were ranked 7th in the country at BartTorvik.com over the final 8 weeks of the season, behind only, in order, Duke, Houston, Florida, Auburn, Gonzaga, and Alabama. Down the stretch, this was one of the best teams in the country, legitimately. And I think I could argue that they bring back 2 starters, replace 3, and the 3 players that they bring in to replace 3 outgoing starters, I think they upgraded at every position. I think Rob Wright will be a better college basketball player at point guard this season than what BYU had at point guard last season, regardless of where he's eventually drafted.
That was an NBA pick just over Yegor Demon, right?
Yes. But I think Rob Wright, as a sophomore, can be better
I
than
agree with
Yegor
you.
Dimon was
I
as
think
a
he will
freshman.
be a
Yeah,
better college
yeah.
basketball player than Yegor Demon was. I agree with that.
There we go. I think Kennard Davis is an upgrade at the 2, and nobody's going to try to argue about AJ DeBonsa. You bring back Richie Saunders, who's an experienced scorer on that wing in the middle. Kiba Keita. I mean, I think that's a team that was playing like a top 10 team in the country down the stretch last season and upgraded the roster. That's my explanation. But obviously, there's plenty of examples throughout the history of sports where you can upgrade a roster on paper, but you don't get the same caliber team. But I'm trusting that BYU is going to be the biggest threat to Houston in the Big 12 and a legitimate threat to go to the Final Four. And if they do that, like this is not hyperbole, BYU right now has a chance to have the best men's basketball team it has ever had.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's keep it in the Big 12 here. I've got Kansas 7th. You've got them, I think, 18 or about there. I am going high on. I think I'm higher on Kansas than anyone you'll find. It's because I've got Darren Peterson leading the charge. If you've been listening to the pod recently, this is not news. We're not breaking news, but we have even more Darren Peterson love coming before the end of the show. Between that, Flory Badunga, I think becoming one of the breakout sophomores in the country. And I just and again, could be wrong. Preseason, let's have some fun. Let's shoot our shot. I don't want to believe that Bill Self is going to have 3 consecutive inarguable underachieving teams. He did it the past 2 seasons when Kansas was preseason number 1. They flopped to their expectation, and so now, understandably, like they lost plenty of pieces. There's some transfers coming in. You know, a lot of people don't know who Melvin Council Jr. is, but he's going to be a good player. I assure you of that. But I understand why Kansas, for the most part, has been slotted into that like 15 to 20ish range. I zag against that. I'm going Kansas number 7. I'm going Kansas number 2 in the Big 12 to Houston. But you're more with the herd, so to speak, on this one. You've got KU sitting there on the back half of the teens.
Yeah, but I like you going in this direction. I mean, what are you really doing? Trusting one of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time and somebody who is really might be one of the greatest players in the history of the sport before this is all over with. I mean,
Honestly, yeah.
That's what you're aligning yourself with. And there was a point in time. I really do think these past couple of years have just flipped everything on the perception of, I guess, Kansas, but specifically Bill, because there was a point in time I would have, and probably almost anybody would have, just had Kansas preseason top 10. I don't even care. Like they're going to be there. They win the Big 12 every year. All right. Like there was years where they lost all 5 starters, and then you'd look up and they're ranked number 1 in the country the next season. And so this shouldn't even really be a thing. But because the past 2 years have been so bad, not relative to normal standards, but relative strictly to Bill standards at KU, you then looked at the roster this offseason, at least I did, and I was like, okay, I know Peterson's great. Marco Jackson's coming off of an injury. I like Melvin Can. My concerns with with this team specifically was just the roster seems to be lacking. You're asking a lot of people to be, or at least multiple people, to be things they've never been before, right? Like you need Marco Jackson on some level to be something he's never been. Flory Badunga on some level to be something he's never been. That was my middle of the summer roster evaluation concern. Here's the truth. I think Darren Peterson's probably better than I properly understood back in the middle of the summer. And the way people are talking about him, the people who see him all the time, his coaches, is just really like mind-blowing stuff. They think they've got something. Just for some context, like Norlander said, if you guys are regular listeners to the pod, you've heard this stuff before. But Bill Self has coached a number 1 pick in the draft in Andrew Wiggins and an NBA MVP in Joel Embiid, and is on record, Darren Peterson's the most equipped, best, most talented, ready-to-go freshman I've ever had in my program. That's who we're talking about here. And I think there's a scenario where he is just so awesome, and Bill feeling better than he's ever felt, or at least better than he's felt in years after 2 recent heart procedures, looking better, feeling better. I don't think it's crazy for you to go out on this limb to the extent that it's a limb. Because again, you're really just asking one of the greatest coaches and one of the greatest players to be great together. They might be able to do it.
Let's take a stroll and do a few more teams here. Because when I do my top 101 list, I do my best. Like I have a general awareness of some of Parrish's stuff because throughout the offseason or summer shoot arounds, I'm going to catch on. But I try and tunnel vision myself as much as possible. And then I always, like, once I get done with the list, okay, where did we differ? There are two fan bases that have found me with a fury. One is Providence. Because I don't have the Friars in my top 50. Providence fans, I genuinely love you. Your passion's amazing. The other one's Florida, predictably so. Florida is my Auburn of this year, although I'm not nearly. I have Florida second in the SEC. I just have the Gators sitting at number 11. Now, GP has Florida, I think, at number 6 overall. My concerns are just with the backcourt. Like Boogie Fland, we had him easily in our top 101 players. Sure. With him and Xavier and Lee, they have to replace the best backcourt in the history of Florida's program. And I say that knowing all too well what they did in 06 and 07. If you look at collectively what Will Richard, Walter Clayton Jr., and Elijah Martin did last year, I think that's the best 3-person backcourt Florida's ever had. So I just have some relative concerns not to put Florida 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. I've got them at number 11. It's a competitive 11, and I've got them there overall. Really, we can be quick on Florida overall, but they were definitely worth addressing here just because I think I might be, quote unquote, fading them by not having them 3, 4, or 5 versus everyone else. You've got them at 6.
I think they're a better candidate to repeat as national champions than UConn was to three-peat as national champions heading into last season. The front court's loaded. I mean, you bring those guys back, and most people think Thomas Houck is going to take a jump. He was obviously terrific during Florida's run to the national championship. And even though he was a 6-man coming off the bench, you can reasonably argue he is Florida's best front court player. The only concern, playing a slightly, if not entirely different role this season. They want him to be a small forward, and that's not really what he was asked to do in a 3-guard lineup last season. So Florida's going to be bigger across 3, 4, 5 because they're going to be bigger at the 3. But, like, is that where he's the most effective? I say that's a concern. It's just like I'm curious to find out. Yeah. Like Todd and his staff are smart enough. They'll if it doesn't work, they'll adjust. They'll figure it out. They know what they're doing. But that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on early. Both things can be true. You're going to miss Walter Clayton. You just are. But I don't think they could have done a better job, realistically, replacing the backcourt that they were going to lose. Like, they did a really good job replacing the backcourt, not even looking at the high school. Like, let's go get experienced, older transfers, plug-and-play guys that can set us up to compete for the SEC, compete for the Final Four, compete for the national title. And I think they've done that. They've positioned themselves to repeat as national champions. But, like, Walter Clayton was the most dynamic guard in the sport last season, and you don't lose something like that and just not miss it at all.
Before we wrap here, just two teams with orange in their color scheme I wanted to touch on that we have differences on. GP has Texas in his preseason top 25. I put the Longhorns at 34 overall. It is purely a function of, because I actually think Sean Miller's a quality coach. They bring back some good pieces. They bring back, actually, I was going to say Mark and Pope. They don't bring back Mark Pope, but Jordan Pope and Tremont Mark. GP's got him top 25. And then I think one of the more glaring differences is Parrish has Illinois at 24. Now, that's not, I think he's a little bit down on Illinois relative, and I'm high. I've got Illinois at number 9. I am totally riveted by what that roster is with a variety of players that are coming back, and then the international flavor that's coming in. I think that's going to be tremendous. So I know we got to hit the break here in just a second, but I just want to at least bring up those two as well. I like that we're not in lockstep on all of them, and I can guarantee you that within the first 3 weeks of the season, we're going to discover real quick that I was off on a couple of these. GP might be as well, but yeah, man, season's right around the corner.
All right. When we come back, we will turn our attention to the National Player of the Year race. Purdue senior Braden Smith is regarded by most as the favorite. He did top our list of the top 101 players in college basketball. But, buddy, if he's going to hold the trophy at the end of the season, he's going to have to hold off an incredible freshman class. Plus, a JT Toppin, a Donovan Dent, you name them. Interesting Player of the Year race. We'll dive into it next. It's the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back, Eye on College Basketball Podcast. Norlander, let's talk players. The freshman class is loaded. at least three guys that are in contention to be the number one overall pick in the 2026 NBA draft. But the favorite, at least right now, according to most, is Purdue senior Braden Smith to be the Wooden Award winner, the Naismith Award winner, the CBS Sports National Player of the Year. I guess I'll ask it this way. Do you really believe that a little guard who might not get drafted, great as he is at this level, is going to be able to hold off Darren Peterson, AJ DeBonsa, Cameron Boozer, and whoever else emerges to actually become Purdue's latest National Player of the Year after Zach Edey won back-to-back awards?
I don't think it's going to happen. If you're watching, you can see our top 10. This is according to our collective voting. Feels good, by the way, to talk about this. I put so much effort and thought into my own top 101 player list. And we finally get to talk about it on the podcast. I'll read it off here for anyone listening after the fact. Braden Smith is 1, Darren Peterson's 2, Toppin's 3, Boozer at Duke is 4, AJ DeBance is 5, Donovan Dennett, UCLA is 6, Trey Kaufman-Renn is 7, Michigan transfer Yaxel Lendenborg is 8, Otega Oweh of Kentucky is 9, and then Milos Uzan is 10. As you look at that list right there and you hear the names that I just read off, I do not think that Braden Smith will hold off on a very, very good crop of players, even some outside of that top 10 list who could factor in overall as well. Didn't even get to guys like LeBaron Philon, Tahad Pettiford. Those are in the SEC, and they're going to be are going to be relied upon to carry their teams who could have good seasons. PJ Haggerty is another big one that we put on our All-America team, GP. I don't think so. I do think Braden Smith will be drafted. I think he's going to have an amazing season. I think he's going to be the first-team All-American, and I think he's going to beat Bobby Hurley's NCAA all-time assist record, which has stood for more than 3 decades. But personally, on my list, I voted for Darren Peterson as the preseason player of the year. I actually had Darren Peterson number 1 on my just best players. And when we talk about National Player of the Year versus who the best player is, that doesn't always necessarily line up, because National Player of the Year is typically the best player on usually a team that's a 1 seed level kind of team. You could be an amazing player, but if you happen to be playing for, say, a team that's on the 5 line, it's much harder for you to get National Player of the Year status. I think we could very well see that with a player like PJ Haggerty, who plays for K-State, could lead the country in scoring this season. Don't know if he'll factor in truly to the National Player of the Year conversation. When it comes to the best players overall, how I looked at it was, okay, if you took all the high major coaches in the sport and they said, okay, you get to start your player right now with one guy. Who are you picking over all others? I believe that they would choose Darren Peterson over Braden Smith. So I had on my list of the best players in the sport, I put Peterson 1. I put Cameron Boozer 2. I think Cameron Boozer, with everything that he's going to do, we're talking about a dude who just had 24 and 23, granted in an exhibition game, GP, but that's ridiculous. And then I had Braden Smith 3 on my list, followed by DeBansa at 4 and Toppin at 5. Now, my top 5 is also our site's top 5, but it's a different order. Did you put Braden Smith number 1 on your list, or did you go with DeBansa or anyone else?
I went with Braden Smith because I think he's got a real shot to do it. I think he's maybe the safest pick to do it, because we don't have to wonder if he's going to be great. He's going to be great. And we don't have to wonder if his team's going to be good. His team's going to be good. Like, I know you think Darren Peterson's team's going to be good, but not everybody is as certain. I think AJ DeBance's team is going to be really good, but not everybody is as certain. Nobody disagrees on Braden Smith, and nobody disagrees on Purdue. And to your earlier point, yes, I think the team stuff does matter, because I don't have any hard and fast rules. But like, if you're not even on a top 25 team, I'm probably not considering you for National Player of the Year. You've got to. It's got to be a combination of excellence individually and really good stuff with your team. And Braden Smith is going to check both of those boxes with his eyes closed. He averaged last season 15.8 points, 8.7 assists, and that gets him up to 758 career assists. Just some numbers here. If he averages 8.7 assists again, exact same thing he did last season, and appears in 37 games, which is clearly possible for a program like Purdue, he will break Bobby Hurley's all-time assist record. So he's going to have that going for him too. So he's going to be chasing a historically relevant record on presumably one of the best teams while putting up All-American numbers. That's a good place to start. My concern for him would be what happens when Darren Peterson averages 27 points per game for a Kansas team that's top 10 in the country, because that might happen. Or what happens when Cameron Boozer is averaging 19 and 13 for a Duke team that's in the top 10? Or what
Feels
happens when
inevitable
AJ
with
DeBansa?
Boozer. Yeah.
One of them is going to pop like this. And they could all three. They've all three had moments already in like exhibitions where it's like, ooh, buddy, here comes Kevin Durant. Here comes Michael Beasley. Here comes Cooper Flagg. Here comes Anthony Davis. Like, we got three of them dudes at least, in college basketball, at least, and maybe more, at least in college basketball. And so I guess I'd bottom line it this way. Braden Smith can have similar numbers to last season. Let's say let's just round up. 16 points, 9 assists, breaks Bobby Hurley's record. Purdue wins the Big Ten and is a 1 seed in the tournament. But what do you do if Darren Peterson's averaging 28 and shooting 43% from three and doing it for a Kansas team that just finished 1 game back of Houston in the Big 12 and is a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament? My fear for Braden Smith, to the extent that I think about this stuff at all, it that way, would be his excellence might just get trumped by a generational talent. That's what you're betting on, right?
Yes. Oh, and I will go on the record. If Darren Peterson is averaging 28 a game and Kansas is like a top 3 team in the Big 12, he will be the national player of the year. 28 a game in college is an insane.
I'm exaggerating numbers, but I'm saying if Darren Peterson puts together a Kevin Durant type season and Kansas is relevant, then it becomes complicated, because that this does happen sometimes in college basketball. Like, you're a great college basketball player, an all-time great college basketball player, but you're up against a generational talent, and the generational talent, one year it's Kevin Durant, this year it might be Peterson, DeBansa, Boozer, it could be, a few others as well.
This is what I was talking about earlier in the show. This is why I'm so hyped for the season. I just feel like we are going to run in. GP, we're talking about this when we were together eating dinner down in Kansas City at Big 12 Media Day. I'm anticipating weekly podcasts where we are just reacting to and gushing over the talent level and some of the big time performances we're going to get. Even from, like I mentioned, Pettiford and Philon, like those guys are going to absolutely pop. Bennett Sturts, who I did not actually personally put in my top 20 player list because I think he's a really, really good point guard and he's getting NBA looks. He finished 11th on our list, but he could be good enough. I have Iowa in my top 30. He could actually, in the same conference as Braden Smith, really give Smith a run for his money in terms of pure point guard play. That's going to be a ton of fun. Darian Williams at NC State, previously at Texas Tech. What's he going to do to pop there? There's a lot of intriguing stuff out there. So many good talents. I think Bruce Thornton will be knocking on the door of being a potential top 10 player to Ohio State as well. But before we get out of the segment, GP, who's a guy or two or three to you, like they didn't make our CBS Sports preseason All-America team. They didn't make ours jointly, but they were on your ballot, who you could see getting there by the end of March. I got a couple I assume you do as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would start that list probably with, let's say, Solo Ball at UConn. UConn's expected to be really good again. Got a 1 seed or got a first place vote in the preseason AP poll. So an opportunity to win a 3rd national title in a 4-year span. And if they are competing for that, I think Solo Ball is going to be a big part of it. And I could see him popping on some All-American teams. Josh Hubbard down at Mississippi State. Like, that just comes down to, like, how good is Mississippi State? Is Mississippi State ranked 13th in the country? Josh Hubbard will be an All-American. All right. Is Mississippi State ranked, are they sitting at 37 at KenPom? Well, then it becomes a different conversation, but he's going to score and that team's got a chance to be good. And then if you're looking for another freshman, you can go Darius Acuff at Arkansas, Nate Ament at Tennessee. But one I would pay attention to, ball's going to be in his hands a lot, and he's going to be on a team that's expected to be good. Michael Brown Jr. At Louisville, a projected one and done lottery pick who, if Louisville's really good, he's going to play a big role in it. And that's how you get on All-America teams.
Yeah, another freshman who could be just a ton of fun to watch. It's amazing. It's so happy for Louisville to be entering into a season where they have Final Four expectations. We are in lockstep on Solo Ball. I believe I had him on my ballot as a preseason third team All American, which wasn't an easy call because they've got Caravan there. Terrace Reed can actually do some damage as well, but I do think Ball will be the most valuable player on that UConn team. A couple guys that I've got, I had Bruce Thornton as a preseason second team All American, just mentioned him for Ohio State. You look at actually what he did last season, both in traditional statistics, and advanced metrics. Extremely valuable. I think he's the most underrated player in the sport. And if Ohio State's a top 25 level team, I do think he'll be an All American. I also had Phylon at Alabama, one of the fastest players in the sport. Like him and Dent can really, they're just bursts, man. And I think Bama's going to be a top three team in the SEC. And I think Phylon's going to jump. He very easily and very closely went to the NBA, turned back at the last minute. And then, a guy who I was actually surprised didn't make our All America team was Thomas Houck. Now, maybe it's because I don't know if he didn't make enough third teams. Again, Florida's got the situation where they've got this loaded front court. Boogie Flan's a good player, so the votes might have canceled out. Alex Condon, to our shock, was a preseason AP first team All America. To me, that's a stretch. I think Houck is Florida's best player. He's the other guy where if I'm going to be wrong on Florida, GP and most others are going to be right, and that's going to be the best team in the SEC. Houck's probably going to be the best player, and if that's the case, you would have to think that the Gators are going to get an All American. So Houck would be my nomination there.
I'm not sure how many people knew who Thomas Houck was until March of last year, right?
Mhm.
I mean, he's just a guy coming off of Florida's bench. That was his label for much of the season, and then obviously he took a bit of a star turn in the bracket. But yeah, we'll see who emerges as Florida's best player. But clearly he's a candidate to do that. And if Florida's going to be good, like you said, they're going to play somebody on an All-American team, and he seems to be as reasonable as an option as anybody else at this point. When we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit about the coaches in the sport, because we at CBS Sports, in a panel of writers and analysts, actually did a top 25 and 1 of current men's college basketball coaches, and Dan Hurley and Kelvin Sampson came out 1 and 2 in that voting. Any problem with that? That's what I'm going to ask you right after this break, Norlander. We're watching. It's the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back, Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're here on CBS Sports Network, and in recent days, we conducted a poll among ourselves, writers and analysts at CBS Sports, and said, hey, just give me a ballot, 25 plus 1. Let's do the top 25 and 1 of current men's college basketball coaches. The great Marcus Nelson got all of our votes. He tabulated. This is what it spit out. Number 1, Dan Hurley at UConn. Number 2, Kelvin Sampson at Houston. Number 3, Rick Pitino at St. John's. Bill Self at Kansas at number 4, and Matt Painter at Purdue at number 5. I don't know, Norlander, that I would have that order exactly, but that top 5, that makes sense to me. Does that look like a good top 5 to you?
Got no issue with it. I want to say that's my top 5, but I had Hurley 1, Sampson 2, Self 3, Patino 4, Painter 5. I think that's what I sent in as my top 5 there. But no issues there. Oates, Golden, Izzo, Few, and Drew finished at the top 10, and then beyond that, you got a variety of coaches. John Shire, not too far off the mark there overall, which makes sense. I had Shire actually in my top 10, considering the lift of what comes with coaching Duke overall. But no big thing. I will say overall for our list. The coach that did not make it that I had in my top 20 was Brian Dutcher at San Diego State. He didn't even make the list. I would say that's collectively a whiff on behalf of our staff. I think Dutcher is inarguably a top 25 coach in the sport, so he didn't make it. Plus, I had Sean Miller and Dana Altman on my ballot, but they didn't make it. So that means I had 3 that weren't on my ballot that made the list, and I did not have Pat Kelsey, Mick Cronin, or the final coach on the list, Ben McCollum, on my personal ballot. McCollum was a tough cut. I know he was on yours. Just want to see how he does at the Big Ten level. He's been amazing at D2, rocked it at Drake, and McCollum is on the back end of the list.
Todd Golden, a big riser from unranked to number 7. If I'm being honest, like I got my about halfway through. I'm just sort of putting it down, trying to look at it, and I was like, hold up, I don't have the guy who just won the national championship in April. I need to add him in there. And so I jumped him up pretty high. I don't think I had him at 7, but I had him much higher than he would have been on anybody's ballot last season. And then with Ben McCollum, I mean, I had him 15th. I mean, at some point, I mean, the guy is what he is.
Can he coach a Big Ten game first, GP? He could be number 5 in a year, but I just want to see him go at the highest level. That's all. That's all.
I mean, I could have thrown him on the list last year, and you could have said, could he coach an NBC game first, GP? And then I'd have been like, all right, let's see how it goes. And you know how it went. So I just think the guy's a special coaching talent. I put him at 15. He came in at 26, but this has never happened and may never happen again as long as we're doing this. He was a Division II coach 2 years ago, and now is considered one of the top 30 coaches at the Division I level, just like that. Was at Drake last season, now taking over the Iowa program. I get it if somebody wants to pump the brakes a little bit, but this guy didn't come out of nowhere. He was dominating things at a different level of basketball, came to a bigger level, dominated that. And I don't think he's going to come in and dominate the Big Ten, but I don't think he's going to I don't think he's going to find himself out of his depths. He's a special coaching talent. Most people will tell you that. And I think year 1 at Iowa is going to be a successful season. Like you said, you've got him in your top 30. I don't think I would, but I would have him projected to make the NCAA tournament.
I'll be real quick on this. Dusty May, a big riser. Golden, a big riser, and Mark Pope, a big riser. Keep in mind, Todd Golden and Mark Pope a year ago at this time had never won an NCAA tournament game. So you do well in the tournament. Obviously, it affects your ranking overall. So those were some guys who really popped this year versus our rankings a year ago.
All right, before we get out of here, we got one segment to go, and let's get some predictions on the record. Who's going to be the player of the year, the freshman of the year, the transfer of the year? We'll do that next. It's the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back, Eye on College Basketball Podcast. We're here on CBS Sports Network. Before we get out of here, let's do some predictions. As you probably picked up on by now, I've got St. John's winning the national championship. Fingers crossed. Norlander's got Houston, but who's going to be the National Player of the Year, National Freshman of the Year, and the National Transfer of the Year? Yeah, that's a thing, even if we're the ones that made it a thing. Norlander, the floor is yours.
Okay, floor is mine. This is my opportunity to tease our Sunday night season preview episode. That's going to go live on YouTube, obviously in the podcast feeds. If you want our Final Fours and all sorts of other preseason predictions, Sunday extravaganza, be there. Never miss a Sunday show. I have the same player of the year and the freshman of the year. That is Darren Peterson from Kansas. I might have seen an outlet earlier this week give you different players and freshman of the year, and both of them being freshmen, which is going to drive Parrish up a wall. Not happening here.
Makes no
Darren
sense.
Peterson is going to be a stud. He is going to be the guy that gets Kansas into the top 10 and provide one of the better one-and-done seasons we've seen. And I say that coming off of the flag season a year ago. I don't think he'll be quite at the flag level, but if you can go one notch down, put me right there for Darren Peterson. Transfer of the year, I've got Donovan Dent at UCLA, narrowly beating out 2 guys in his conference. Yaxel Lendenborg at Michigan, who I think is going to be awesome and a stat monster. And I actually think Bennett Sturts is going to be so good he gets Iowa into the top 30 this year. And though GP didn't tee it up, just for official purposes, we have Joseph Tugler at Houston as our preseason defensive player of the year pick. GP, who do you got?
As I hinted at earlier, I'm just going with Braden Smith at Purdue as the National Player of the Year, but I am aware that he is at risk of one of these generational talents in a one-and-done year of college could just overwhelm him statistically and in all of the ways guys who are projected to go in the top 3 in an NBA draft can. Like, they're all 3 special, Debansa, Peterson, and Boozer, and they're all at, like, premier college basketball programs that are expected to be really good. Can Braden Smith hold them off? I understand why people are skeptical, but for now, I'll stick with them. Freshman of the year, I understand the Darren Peterson hype. I'm not skeptical of it at all, but I've long been a believer in AJ Debansa. I'm going that way. Transfer of the year, Donovan Dent at UCLA. Like Norlander said, Sunday show, and then the season gets started Monday. Can't wait. Shouts to Devin Downey, Chester, South Carolina, Terry Teagle, Huck, and Larnell. Thank you guys for being here. We'll talk to you again real soon.